Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inside Unreal, a show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I am your host, Dan Hutnick, and before we jump into the topic for today, I do have a quick news beat that I'd like to touch on real quick, and that is this incredible release from Scans Factory. Go ahead and share a cool video of that right now. This is London 7 Dials, which was built with over 52,000 photos captured on location and turned into a modular production-ready pieces that in turn make up this awe-inspiring scene for sale on Fab for Unreal Engine, Unreal Editor for Fortnite, and Unity. So whatever platform is your cup of tea, you'll be able to enjoy London, British environment from the talented and dedicated team at Scans Factory. City Pack includes over 1,500 modular assets, prefab, level instances to streamline your workflows, modular buildings, street elements, props, and even foliage. There are also simple interiors and traditional storefronts. As if that weren't already enough, it features 3 lighting scenarios for narrative exploration, along with audio, visual effects, level instances, and meshes, all optimized for real time. Please check it out on Fab. But with that, we'll jump into the topic for today. And with us, we actually have a few folks from Cascadeur that have kindly agreed to come on and talk about their new 2026.1 update for Cascadeur, which includes LiveLink for Unreal. So let's jump in and introduce the team, starting with Max. How you doing, Max?
All right, thank you. Glad to be here. And yes, indeed. So my name is Max. I'm a content like motion designer for the company. Also, I do workshops, and I'm sort of like have 15 years background in CGI, but I was always scared of animation, and sort of like Cascadeur turned me over, and now I'm kind of into animation. So yeah. So today I'll be presenting the new features and showcasing the live link that we have developed with you guys.
Yeah, no, I remember that being one of the things I think we talked about very early on is that I dabbled in animation probably 15 years ago. And while I liked it well enough, it wasn't like my favorite thing to do. But looking at these tools, I'm actually like, I don't know, I actually kind of want to jump in now and play with these because these look really cool.
I didn't like it a single bit. I was scarred for life by it. I mean, still like animating in Maya triggers me a lot. Like, no joke.
Well, next up we have Alexander. How are you doing, Alexander? I think you're muted.
Sorry.
No worries.
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Alex, and I'm the producer of Cascadeur and CTO, and I'm here mainly to answer questions, and especially technical questions if they come up. So happy to meet you.
Perfect. And we also have Nathaniel. How are you doing, Nathaniel?
Good. So I'm Nathaniel Albright, and I support the Cascadeur team with things related to the rigging side of Cascadeur. So when you go into rig mode inside of Cascadeur, I'm probably the person that's writing some Python scripts and backend stuff to deal with the rigging stuff. So I'm here today just to talk a little bit about some of the things we plan to do in the future here with LiveLink and hang out with everyone and see what this is all about.
Great. And we do have one final person here with us. They are playing the role of voice of God for today. And that is Andre. How are you doing, Andre?
Hello, everyone. My name's Andrew. I'm fine, thank you. And I think I'm not gonna talk much. Yeah, I'm part of a Cascadeur technical team. So let's have a nice stream.
Perfect. Yeah, this is gonna be super fun. So let's jump in. We got a lot to talk about here. So for those folks who aren't familiar, what is Cascadeur? And then after that, what are kind of the main key features of this 20.26.1 update? Obviously, we know Unreal LiveLink is one of the big features, but some of the other features, things that they can expect, and just use cases for Cascadeur, and just bring everybody up to speed about the tool and what we're going to be talking about today.
I think we can definitely. Maybe we could just jump into like sharing my screen then, and I will just showcase certain things as I speak, I guess. What do you guys think?
Yeah, perfect. Let me get that up and running here in just 1 second. Okay, and we can switch over.
Ooh, okay, so now we are inside Cascadeur.
Perfect.
Pun intended. Yeah, so Cascadeur is a 3D animation software, right? That utilizes a lot of interesting AI technology. For example, one of them is like things like auto posing. So, say you have your character, and then we have a system which allows you to pose your character easily, which kind of like predicts the pose of the character based on all the poses it knows of. So, for example, say I don't know, we can like rotate the character's hand, and as you can see, it will automatically rotate the character's elbow and shoulder. So you do not have to do this. It's not like you do not have to do this manually, but it's something that can simplify the workflow a lot. And it works both ways. So, for example, if you have your character like broken down, which looks like Thriller, Michael Jackson, you, instead of trying to figure out it manually, you can just unlock the points, and it will give you a prediction for the position of those points, and it will be consistent. Just to quickly compare, so that would be your normal rig, right, where you will just raise the hand, for example, and then you see like nothing really happens with the shoulder, right? When with auto posing, as you move up the hand, you can see that the shoulder rises as well. So it really speeds up the process, and it could be used not only to pose the character, but also to clean up animation, for example. Oftentimes, especially with mocaps, you get characters whose shoulders are like this, or like other glitches, and then you can do this either on one frame or on multiple frames, or on the whole animation, which effectively cleans up the animation very quickly. Also, we have a similar thing for fingers. So by moving one finger, you can just adjust the position of the whole hand. So quickly, like that, you can make a fist, right? Or, just play around with it and, get some kind of cool motion or cool poses without really breaking a sweat, so to speak. So that's one of the things that it does. Another thing which is we are super proud of is our in-betweening system, which allows you to quickly create any animation between two keyframes or multiple keyframes. So say we have the character standing there, then we can have, say, another keyframe and just move the character a little bit, and then so that would be your normal interpolation, like this. So the character will be just, interpolated between the frames, but you can use in-betweening as a kind of interpolation, and that will actually generate animation between the frames. And, you can just play with the poses or the timing. Say you want the character to move a greater distance, so the character will actually try and probably run there, or you can just add additional poses and let's say maybe like so, get the character to crouch a bit, and then you can see that it will actually try to go through these poses, and by changes the poses you can change sort of like influence the animation that it generates, so to speak. And you can see that.
To jump in
Yep.
so early into this, but I already have a bunch of questions, and I want to throw this out to the audience as well. If you have any questions for the team about Cascadeur specifically, that's who we have on here to talk about, please leave in brackets question in caps followed by your question, and we will gather them throughout the show so that we can throw them at the guests towards the end or in the middle if it makes sense based on what they are presenting. Again, if you have any questions for this team here specifically, that is the avenue to do it. If you have other general questions, general Unreal questions, any sort of thing like that, please go to our EDC, our Epic developer community, and go to the forums, make a post there, search for posts there. There's plenty of resources on all those general topics there. Today, we are specifically talking about Cascadeur. With that, I did have a couple quick questions to throw at you. This is really cool. I'm already seeing a ton of woes and high fives and excitement in the chat. People are really liking what they're seeing already. With this sort of thing, how much control do you have over some of these automated systems, right? Like clearly that in-betweening system is using the AI to kind of interpret what it thinks the character would need to move and do based off of their positioning and the speed at which they are moving. But is there like any sort of prompting here? Can you say walk like a zombie or anything like that? Or is it really just kind of like inference and you have to kind of specify based off of the movements and poses and keys for this kind of system?
So first of all, there's multiple ways. Trying to answer your question.
Yeah,
first of all, so
the
first, with in-betweening specifically, the idea of it is that it updates almost instantaneously, right? So the point is that, for example, should I move this keyframe somewhere there, you'll see that almost instantly the animation just regenerates, right? It's almost like a real-time solution. So it works quickly, but the way for you to influence it would be to change the poses. So for example, if say I put like if the character is like standing, right? So the animation would sort of like stop there, right, or come to a stop. If the character is actually walking or like in an action pose, so the in-betweening will generate motion like going through the pose. So changing the poses would be one of the ways you can control it. Also, you can add AI descriptions as we have them. You can say it like, I want you to run or to jump, etc., etc. And then it will sort of like pick from the database of that particular kind of database. However, you do need, certain things like an actual jump or mid-air situation for it to kind of like get data from this data set, so to speak.
Yeah. And it kind of, sorry if I'll just jump in really quick, but because it has to go through the keys, and the keys are super important, and this is more of a type of, we try to be more of a type of interpolation. It has to go through the keys, and that actually limits the AI system quite a lot. Yeah, and by the way, it's run on your CPU. It's run locally. Nothing is going into the cloud. So it's a smaller AI model.
That was one of my next questions. Actually, you beat me right to it. That's perfect.
Yeah, but let me give you just a very smaller. No, go ahead. Sorry.
And well, because it's smaller, it doesn't actually work with text. So yeah. You all you can do is these labels, but even with these labels, for now, it doesn't listen to them very much. It much more listens to the poses.
And how much overriding does it do for any sort of key position? Like if I key something in that position, that's locked, right? It's really just kind of the in-betweening that it's going to adjust.
I think it doesn't change the keyframes.
Yeah, it doesn't change the keyframes, but also you can keyframe different parts of your, so you don't have to keyframe the whole body. So for example, here, maybe I like the way, I like the whole pose, but I want, like the feet to be positioned in a different way. And I could just, set a keyframe on the character's feet and then like adjust their position in some kind of a way. Maybe even like move them around slightly, and then it will sort of like regenerate the whole pose to kind of like match that movement. So see, like you could do things like this.
Instant update for the in-between splines is so cool. I love that.
Yeah. And also, when you talk about control, then you can go. One of the tools that we have is called animation unbaking, because what you see now is almost like, it's not like keyframes and interpolations. It's more like a baked kind of animation. So it's almost like this. So where every single frame is a keyframe. But we have a tool which is called animation unbaking, which can turn any like baked animation that you have into a set of keyframes and interpolations between them. So effectively, it makes any animation sort of like turns anything into keyframe, basically like this. So see here now we have like keyframes and interpolations between them. So I can then tackle this animation as a keyframe and edit poses and do other stuff to it. So that's another level, I believe, of control that you can have.
The fact that you got this animation up and running in what, the 7 minutes maybe, is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's true. Also, when you talk about control over the poses, as you can see, we have different tracks for like the head, the torso, the arms, the legs, etc. And for example, here the character is holding a shield and a sword, right? And if I were to just use in betweening for everything, you see that it's sort of like it kind of like matches the first and the last pose, but everything between that is sort of generated. But I can instead use interpolation, for example, on characters' arms instead of in betweening. And this way I could actually, get the character. Okay, so probably we can use FK for the arms interpolation. Yeah, this way it holds the shield and the sword the way it did in the animation. Probably I can even do torso I can interpolate torso as well. See, this way I can almost preserve parts of the animation or parts of the pose that I wanted to keep true, as you can see, right? And although it may look stiff, but then you can use things like autophysics, which can add, things like secondary motion and other things to make this kind of animation a bit more lively, so to speak.
Or you can put keys in and move it around as you want, but you will only need to change the keys, change the poses for the torso or the arms. And this is really powerful because we cannot record and teach, at least for now, AI to hold anything anywhere and kind of remember that and hold it really as we want it. And so we are really looking into the ways we can combine traditional classic animation and generation from AI to kind of let the user control what he wants, but let the AI do all the other work. And this is one of the ways we came up with, that it generates for you can generate for the main body, but for arms you can set FK and do some manipulations.
And I think that's an important thing to say too, right? With this being like an in-betweening feature, it's important to consider it as an in-betweening feature, right? Like this is supposed to be kind of filling in the gaps between your major movements, your major poses and stuff like that. It isn't maybe necessarily strictly for just like constructing the entire animation from scratch, from start to finish on its own, right?
Start, we had it like a separate button and you press it, but with time we understood that it will be more natural if it was right inside the tracks where we place the types of interpolation like linear, Bezier, etc. So, and you can just put like in between interpolation, and now it will fill out. And by the way, this model, and I'm sorry, I'm really pulling this into the technical detail direction, but I just want to say that this model is it doesn't have any randomness in it. It's a transformer actually, but it's not a diffusion model, so it generates every time the same thing. It's more predictable.
Yeah, I also just want to emphasize we love getting in the weeds and nerdy here. It's kind of our whole thing. So
Okay.
Well, Alexander is probably the best person then to ask for,
Perfect.
all the technical and cool stuff.
I'll try my best.
What I'm trying to showcase here, just very quickly, is that you can definitely use in-betweening to combine different animations together. So, for example, wrong button, sorry. Yeah, so for instance, we can have different animations. Ooh, but it sort of like knows it's running. I don't want it, or maybe like, yeah, let's say like it knows it's running. Imagine we had two animations like this. So here the character is just sort of like going forward and then running here. So we can definitely just use in-betweening to combine two of these animations together. And as you can see, it will make a seamless transition between these animations. So it will take into account the velocities and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very cool way to say, just combine animations, or, if you have if you're working with mocap and then you have like a really janky bit, you can sort of generate animation there. And and then you can just play around with these things and almost like in real time and then get consistent results with it. But yeah.
We have a lot of excitement in chat for these tools. People are really, really interested in them. I think they're very cool.
Yeah, and something I showed here, see, like your character can appear like very, very stiff here, but you can then use, things like secondary motion and then sort of like add life to the animation. And these are the things that you can play around with autophysics and stuff. And speaking of autophysics, there's an example that I want to show that would be another reason people would want to use Cascadeur. So here is like a keyframe animation of, like a person doing like crazy tricks. So just going through the keyframes here. If we just interpolate it, right, you can see that it was probably fine, but then here nothing really happens. It was supposed to be like it was supposed to be like a visual reference, but yeah, just you can tell that something is off with this animation. And if we track the character's center of mass, for example, you can see that all the jumps, the ballistic trajectories for the jumps are not accurate. And it's just a bit of a mess, to be honest. But if you use physics and okay, give me a second. What's that? All right, yeah, it was all settings for the physics. By using autophysics, you can see how it corrects the ballistic trajectories for the jumps, and just makes the animation smoother overall. And also, and you have to play this back in a lower speed, it then can allow you to make, crazy tricks like this. Almost like, I want to say in no time, but, it sort of like calculates the angular momentum and just makes it look cool and realistic.
This is a really great example on that initial one, where like just having your center of gravity shift in a way you might not look at that animation immediately and go, oh, I can tell it's wrong because the center of gravity was shifting in weird ways. But like that little detail went so far into smoothing out and making that second animation feel so much more believable, which makes sense because it's physics driven, right? So it's going to abide by rules like center of gravity and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so you see like all the rotations, they happen around the character's immediate center of mass, right, which is calculated for every frame, and is composed of like the rigid bodies, which you get when you rig a character inside Cascadeur. So if we were, for example, to change some properties of the character, say they would have like a really big and heavy head, which could happen, right? You may have a character which is not really a standard human like or human looking like. So say we had, the head, which was extremely heavy. And by the way, I don't know if you can see it. So this is the character's center of mass at the moment. I'm sorry if it's just too like little, but it's there. I will just guide you. Then say, let's just make for fun, let's make it like 100 kilograms, the head. So now the character's center of mass has shifted way towards the head, right? And if we check what physics has done, now it will, sort of like rotate the character more like around its head, right? Rather than how this or
That is so cool.
that gives you an idea that, for example, you can have a character with a heavy sword or an axe or something like this, and just by changing a few parameters, you can just get different variations for your animations very quickly.
And that can so specifically. Sorry, not to interrupt. I love this so specifically for like, because one of the I don't know how to best to phrase it. Like, conceits that comes with mocap is that sometimes things feel very mocap, especially when it's a human doing something that maybe is a little more inhuman. So being able to do something like, I don't know, if you're a giant orc, right, and you have like way more weight up above and kind of like smaller stumbly legs, there's a lot of post that you're going to have to do to that animation to make that feel right. But doing something as simple as just like grabbing the shoulders or like the chest or whatever and increasing its weight, and then letting this kind of infer a fair bit of that for you just to get you a good starting point is awesome.
And yes, like I remember, I probably heard people say like a man in a suit effects, right? A man in a suit, sort of like it's obviously a cartoon character, for example, or like a different proportions character, but you can tell that was a man in a suit recording this mocap for it, right? So yeah, it definitely helps with those kind of things. But also like you have control over the end result. So, for example, if I were to say, like, I really want to keep this pose fully, right? I can always use a priority frame function, and it will prioritize the pose and sort of like still like run physics through it. Obviously, it's not moving it fully because it still prioritizes the ballistic trajectory first, but it, as you can see, it gave me like a perfect replica of the pose that I had. And yeah.
Is that weighted? Like, can you like adjust how much influence that key has over it, or is it just kind of binary on and off?
With priority frame, it sort of like prioritizes the whole character or like the full pose 100%. But then you have, with autophysics, you can just apply how much of autophysics there is. I don't know, like I never use this because it's always like 100% for me. But also, there's another thing, just very quickly, you can specify, like, sorry, Alex, just one thing. You can specify, a very particular point or set of points in certain frames. You can say, like, how much of that you want to have, for those points. So you see, like, if I go like 100%, it will just try to copy its like local and global position. But you could just say like just 50% prioritize the position of these points in the animation, and it will give it like this.
You were going to chime in, Alexander?
Yeah, I just want to say that the priority frame translates like a binary flag. It would be easy to make it weighted, but usually as we see it, you have usually you have a key pose you really want the animation to go through, and so you just, for now, we didn't have to make it like a function, I don't know, like a Bezier curve or something that is weighted and that kind of gains weight. Although inside the solver, and this out of physics, it's basically like a nonlinear solver. It is just a big weight. You can actually access it in the settings. I think it's like 10,000 of something. Yeah, this other sliders you mentioned that increase and decrease the physics, and I hope I'm not getting anything wrong here, but they actually they no yeah, I think they don't affect the function, the optimization function. They more like blend the when you apply between the physically correct results and between the animation, they kind of blend the between those two. maybe in a more smart way, but
I think with priority frame, they still like keep it 100%, right?
with priority frame goes inside the solution, so it is still it tries to be 100% correct. Sometimes if you put too many, you put like one priority frame inside a jump, it will be correct. It's just that the function actually resolves. If you put two priority frames, usually it's hard to solve it. I mean, not hard, like impossible to solve it, but it will try its best to kind of keep the result realistic in terms of physics laws and close to your animation, preferring like your animation, especially the key frames.
Do you want like a little bit of a nerdy stuff here?
Yes.
About priority frames. So the way they work now is that, for example, you can say like in this particular frame, I want to keep, this rotation of the character, and just you can click it, you can set priority frame, and it will just perfectly blend, the start of the jump and the end of the jump. But this is not how physics works, right? So in order to get, certain momentum, so you have to either change the starting frame of the animation or the end frame of the animation. And for that, if you actually want to say like, what do I need to change, in the poses in my animation, in the start or the end of the jump, in order to get this particular rotation in the middle. And for this, you can then use like physics, the actual physics to actually help you. And you can choose whether to prioritize the first or the last ballistic frame. So let's say that I'm not prioritizing the last ballistic frame. And in order to get this rotation here, when I go to the last frame of the animation, see now the frame where the character lands is different, right? So the rotation is completely different, for example, from the pose that I had, right? And so what I could do, I could say I could either, just pose the character mimic the pose of the character, just like so, I believe in this frame or something like this. Or instead, I could just apply the physics results on this particular frame only. No. Yeah, so this way, see, I applied this result in this particular frame. Now, if I were to turn off priority frame here, it would keep this rotation because, in order to get to that rotation, it had to land in a different way. So this way you can say like, what do I need to get from, in order to get into this pose? And this way you can use the physics tools to actually guide you. And give you an idea of what you need to change, to get there physically accurately, so to speak. I'm kind of like excited for it because I remember then when it was not a thing, you would just change, you would set priority frame, and then, the first pose and the last pose would change automatically. But then it was kind of like nerfed, right, a little bit, and kind of now it just blends it.
No, it wasn't nerfed. It was on the, like, we kind of improved it. When we started,
but I mean, like, it's
had like
less
arrows
hardcore
and stuff visualizing the angular momentum, but as time went on, we understood that it's better to make everything as automatic as possible. So
No, it's true. It definitely improves it. And by the way, just very quickly about autophysics, not to take too much time with it. Well, imagine you had this animation and it was like perfectly fine and you were happy with, this complex rotation and what have you. But then something would change and you would want the character to land somewhere else, right? And here you can just simply just select the amount of frames, right? Then grab the character and then just move them around. Say, I want them to land, very quickly. I want them to land somewhere else, like here. And you can see that it will create this ballistic trajectory and effectively the rotations and everything around that. Yeah, but hopefully that
I,
gives you an idea that you can then take any animation and just edit it and use physics to kind of like make sense of it.
I love that in like not only just a general production standpoint, but also just from like an education standpoint. I think it's so interesting and could be extremely valuable for like having somebody who's doing some keyframe animation, right? They set all their key poses, they go through it, they hit play or whatever, and then almost use the physics sim as like a check to say like how close were you with these sorts of things? Like, is this feeling pretty good? Does the physics really need to change the animation in order to make this work? Because if it does, then you probably have some things you want to adjust. I think that alone is really cool. Putting aside all the other great reasons or benefits of this tool.
Actually, a lot of animators, especially more professional animators who use Cascadeur, they don't apply the result. They just turn on the out of physics tool and they look at what it shows, and they kind of they change the animation, and they kind of see, and they make it closer. I don't know. They kind of work with it turned on, and see the feedback of the out of physics tool, and kind of change it. So sometimes they have the same animation, and then sometimes not. It's uh, based on the type of animation, but yeah. And Max has actually shown another
No,
thing
no,
to when you have this approach. We have a special mode for it, which
yeah. So,
freezes.
mhm.
Love that.
Yeah, if I'll just chime in for a quick second on that note. Yeah, I'll say I'm not only the what's that line of like I'm not only the president, I'm also the client or something. That line, like I love animating in Cascadeur. Is why I originally got in touch with Cascadeur. I said like this tool. I've been animating and in the animation industry since 1999, and started in animation and went to tech art eventually. And I was like, this application at its core is completely different than how any other application handles it at so many different levels. And I could spend a day explaining what I mean by that. But for me, when I started hand animating in this, because you hear online sometimes people say, well, you can't hand animate and it's just physics stuff, but it's not true at all. You can apply all those traditional techniques you're used to. You can do your moving holds. You got a tweener tool, so you can, tween between your poses, add your slow in and slow outs, and overshoots and all that good stuff. But for me, when I got in here and started applying those traditional techniques, and then as they just mentioned, I would just turn on the physics just to kind of see. Like I'd be like, something isn't feeling right in my animation. I turn on the physics, align the physics character, and go, oh yeah, like my center of mass is off, or like I'm not taking the momentum of my body properly in this animation. And starting to think about it more in that sense, I think actually made me a stronger animator when I started really thinking about what's the physics happening behind these limbs when I'm doing these poses. And so how does momentum and the motion carry through the poses I'm making? So I feel like animating Cascadeur actually improved my capabilities as just a hand key animator for sure. And then all the awesome stuff you can do on top. But I'll stop plugging it because yeah, I geek out about it when people start talking about it.
No, but I
No,
think
we're all
that's
fans here.
completely yeah, I think that's completely true though, and I think like almost using it as like a live reference is great, right? Like tools being able to do some work for you is obviously a benefit, right? Because it's some work that you don't have to do, but we don't necessarily like it's you still want to have a strong foundation as an animator, right? Like so that way you can author things that have intent behind them, right? Especially if you're trying to do something stylized or any sort of thing like that, or like instead of it just being like I'm a normal guy walking, like maybe you're gonna do the like, oh, I'm injured and I need to like I have this kind of limp or like a shoulder sort of thing. Like you still need to be able to have that key understanding of root motion and mass and all that sort of stuff. And having something like this is just like a quick check of like, hey, am I in the ballpark here? Am I doing the right thing? Because that's something that comes up very, very common. The same way like in 3D or even 2D, that sort of thing, we have that like uncanny valley, right? For faces and humans and things like that. The uncanny valley is extremely wide for animation, and it's so easy to look at animation and then go, something's wrong there. But it's hard, especially for an untrained person, to like pinpoint why. Like, what
Yeah.
is it that isn't right with this? And usually things like your center of mass is not where it should be, or the character's not pivoting around the way it's supposed to, or this thing feels too light and floaty when it should be heavier. Those sorts of things are very common pitfalls with that. And physics can very easily show you where those sorts of things are, which then helps make a smoother animation. Now I'm going on too long.
But you are saying the correct thing. And another way to actually learn animation is, for example, so see, this was a keyframe animation in the beginning. So I used the reference to create this animation, right? And as you can see, if you just quickly look through the keyframes, so we basically like make those keyframes based on points of contact, right? So for example, here the foot comes in contact with the ground, that's a keyframe. This foot loses the contact with the ground, that's another keyframe. Because essentially this is how physics works in real life, right? So we're constantly sort of like balancing between these fulcrum points or points of contact, fighting gravity. Yeah, so, and if we were to say, for example, apply this results, the physics result to this animation, say like, we're happy with it, let's just fully apply this results. And then like now you see the keyframes, but so you would believe what I'm saying. Trust me, Cascadeur does not remember what happened there, so it doesn't know what the keyframes were. So if this was just an animation that you downloaded from somewhere, right, something like this, and you would want to use this tool which gives you keyframes for this animation, as you can see, for example, it goes in certain steps. So first steps, it evaluates those points of contact. So you can then like these are the points of contact. So these are the essential keyframes you would have to make in order, for this animation to work. And, hopefully what the point I'm trying to make is that you can use these tools to actually learn to animate, so these are the keyframes that I would have to make in order to make this animation happen. And then, there's additional keyframes for additional poses and, et cetera, et cetera. So you can use this, do something like a reverse, what do you call it? Like reverse, what is it? Reverse engineering. Yeah.
Not to spend forever on just the physics side of it, because I feel like we could. I did have one quick question to before we possibly move on to whatever next you were going to show. With that physics system, is it I was going to use the word robust. That's not the word I want to use. Can it tell, like, if I say, hey, I'm doing this kind of, parkour movement, right? But then I set that keyframe really far, like the jump is way too far for physics to even make sense. Does it just kind of brute force the physics with that sort of thing, or will you get to a point where it's like, hey, this just isn't possible and we're going to get a different result? Or even just like letting you know, like, hey, we've interpolated to this point and we've done the best we can with the physics here, but this is inaccurate, it is not physically correct, any sort of thing like that?
I'll give you an example.
Well, so, do you mean like? Never mind.
No,
I mean, if you move it, if you move it across the floor, across the ground, you can actually get into any position in terms of the physical constraints that we apply to it. You just need a really fast like start, and then you can get anywhere. But if you put it or down, then like it's basically the solution of how long your jump in is and how high up do you go. There is just like a direct solution. Sometimes there are two, but no, probably not.
Right, like because for an example, right, like if you're doing like, I don't know, just like a backflip, right?
No.
You have your key frames, your key positions set on a timeline that's take a certain amount of time to reach. But then if you make that distance between those two frames really far, physically that's not possible to do without some extreme acceleration at some point in it to get you from point A to point B. How does the physics handle that?
Well, actually, this physics corrector part of the auto physics tool, it doesn't go into details like how much acceleration you can gain. Or you could say it goes, but in such a way that it's very unlikely that you will run into this constraints. It doesn't go up to the muscle level or anything like that.
Sure.
For it, the whole character is actually like a big rigid body blob that moves around, and for that it just calculates whether it can apply force across the ground, considering like considering the position and rotation of the whole character. Can it apply this force? And it will just rotate the character in such a way that it can apply the force, basically. You can try to put it here in the animation, like very far away, and you will see that it will just bend the character very and make it super powerful, so it just shoots off
yeah, so it's basically going to do its best to make sure that the physics work.
Yeah, and right. I don't know how to explain without going into maths, but it operates on such a level that this kind of constraints are not hard for it, like how far it jumps, but how high it jumps, for example, it is constrained by that, and I think Max show some stuff.
Yeah, but I'm showing this in the context of in-betweening. Look, I can just demonstrate it here, right? So remember we talked about these points of contact, right? So when the person like has contact, or when, say, a person rather loses the contact with the ground, that's where it starts to build this ballistic trajectory for the jump, right? And the jump happens like from this frame onto the frame with where the character touches the ground the next time, right? So these are the frames of the ballistic trajectory. So with in-betweening, when you use it, you can then sort of like lower the character, and it will just get the character to jump. It will automatically adjust the frames where the character starts the jump and lands, right? So if I'm raising the character, you see like it starts the jump sooner and lands later. But once you have this animation as, for example, like we're cool with it, let's unbake it and continue to work with it. So then you can play around with, for example, the time the character spans in the air, because the longer the character spans in the air, the higher the jump should be, right? So you can just say like, just extend the time the character spans in the air like this, and then you will get a higher jump. If that makes sense. So even if I give it even more frames,
or you can actually change the gravity.
Yes, and that was the next point.
If you change the gravity, then so like on Moon, you jump differently.
Yeah, so you can just double the gravity, for example, of the Earth, and then you get like a high jump. So basically, I was able to mimic what I was going for originally with double the gravity. So you can play around with these settings and kind of like, and I believe this is the question of where, whether you want it to be actually physically accurate, or you just want, things like the character's center of mass, inertia, and things like this. And then you want to sort of like cheat the physics, make the gravity double the gravity or something like this. You sort of like have the balance between, accuracy and creativity here. And I think this is very important to mention, because oftentimes when people hear, physics and autophysics, they think it's like a very rigid system, although it is, right? But then you can play around with it and, get more stuff, more creative stuff out of it as well.
Yeah, in a lot of instances, and this is true of animation, it's true of character design, environment design, level design, all that sort of things, is it's not really trying to be about being like 100% accurate, but more about just feeling believable. As long as you have buy-in to it, it could break the rules, in any number of ways, as long as it's not breaking them so much that you then start going like, this is feeling wrong or off to me now.
True. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to show about Cascadeur, and then we jump into LiveLink, I promise. Yes. So is the retargeting system, right? So once you bring in the character, and I will show it very quickly in when we get to the live link, you rig it using the rigging tools in Cascadeur, and then gives you this auto-posing rig, right? Which can then allow you to retarget any animation between the characters. So for example, here, it's a simple like copy and paste. So I'm retargeting this animation onto this robot here. Let me just select enough keyframes, make sure that we have enough keyframes here. And then retargeting paste, and there you have it. You have the animation that we generated on one character retargeted on a different character, right? So this is the robot running. The cool thing is, now if we compare these scenes like side by side, you will see that the scale is completely different. But the retargeting system allows you to sort of like compensate for those differences in both skeletal structure, differences in proportions. So like characters with longer legs will run bigger distances, etc., etc. And yeah, so this is a cool tool. And as you can see, also, like once we retarget the animation, and that could be also due to mocap and other stuff like that, you see sort of like the character's feet falling through the ground and sliding around a little bit. And we have a quick solution for that, which is called fulcrum motion cleaning. That's literally a single button which pushes, characters' feet out of the surface and prevents them from sliding. So just by clicking this button, just gives you like a perfect cleanup solution for your animation. And yeah, not only it prevents the feet from sliding, sorry, it also prevents the knees from popping, because it adjusts the height of the pelvis of the character, so you will never get those knee pops.
Is that button using the bones of the character to dictate that, or the actual scale, mesh or bounding box?
So it utilizes this like you can visualize those fulcrum points, right? See those? It's too big, so it determines where when the character comes in contact with the ground, and based on that, let me just undo it. So you see, and based on that, it sort of like then limits the position, or sort of like corrects the position of the foot. So it understands that here it's still like fulcrum, and it's still fulcrum up to this frame. And, based on that, it actually cleans it up, making sure that it's stable during the time it's considered to be fulcrum. And then when it's not, it's not.
Awesome.
And also it takes into account the height of the character. So if you would have a character on high heels, for example, or on like platforms, it will also take that into account and, clean up the feet according to the character that you have. So, yeah.
I think it actually takes into account the T-pose to understand how high the points should be.
So when you rig the character, it's very important, like at the point of the rigging, that your character is stands flat on the ground. And if they're wearing heels, their position of the feet is natural, right? Because oftentimes you see like when there's a high heel, the characters will stand flat on the ground, but then their heel would just sort of like poke through the ground. No, here you have to just position the character exactly as you want to see it, in the animation when you rig it. Yeah.
Great.
I guess, yeah, let's probably move on to linking, because why not?
Let's do it.
Oh, I thought I was going to need a break, but let's pull through. Okay, so, and by the way, see, in Cascadeur, we can link as many scenes as we want together. Oh, I said that. Yeah, I did say that. But which allows you to, kind of have multiple scenes in the same place, but then you can seamlessly move between those scenes just by like double clicking the character. You can then just go into that character's timeline and keyframes, which allows you to, keep your keyframes, keep your scene rather clean, but then still have multiple characters sort of like at least visually interact with each other. Not physically, visually.
Yeah, to get them interact physically, you'll need them in one scene.
Yeah, which you also can do if you want to. All right. So about, the reason we came to be, in this podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, is the actual tool that we have, which is Unreal Engine Live Link. There was an iteration before that, but that was a very simple one. So this one we paid much more attention to developing. So what I have here is a scene in Unreal Engine, a character, which I'm going to animate. And let me just start the real time. Yeah. Something I noticed when I was testing it, when you have like Unreal running and Cascadeur running, you can get this type of very unresponsive viewport in Cascadeur. The workaround for that was to just limit Unreal Engine to 30 frames per second. So for that, you have this command T max FPS space 30. Then when you limit it to 30 FPS, then you should get a much more responsive Cascadeur. Come on.
You do have multiple things open and screen sharing and doing all that stuff, so we're asking quite a lot of your PC right now.
Well, it was working. Let's just close scenes that we don't need, I think. Let's just try. Otherwise, it will just restart it and maybe it'll take a minute. No, it's still a little bit unresponsive. Okay. Just a sec.
Maybe you can limit to 20 FPS. Does the real time affect it? I have to say, you love to turn on real time FPS on the Unreal side, which generates the rain, of course, but it also takes up a lot of resources.
No, it's fine.
I think
that was just
Unreal has higher priority by default in the operational system, so it makes the Cascadeur lag.
Okay. Yeah, but anyways, I think it runs well now.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Again. Well, it used to run better, but we can deal with it. We can deal with that. I showed you most of the functions in Cascadeur, so now it's just
you want to turn off the rain. I understand.
I don't want to turn off the rain. That's all the
Again, sharing your screen too also is an overhead performance wise, so I'm sure that's also adding a little bit to your.
It works perfectly fine, trust me. But anyways, so the idea is to link the character that you have in Cascadeur to the character that you have in Unreal Engine, right? So here I have this character Cassie Live, and I have the same skeleton, or the character with the same skeleton in Cascadeur. So before you actually go into this, in order to get this live link working, we have this link, and I believe you can share the link. I believe, Dan, you can share this link in the description for the live stream. Is the link to our documentation where you can get this plugin from, in order to install it into your Unreal Engine plugins directory on your computer. So you have to do this for probably at this time. That's the only way to get the plugin. But later on, and probably very soon, we'll make sure that this plugin is available on Fab, so you can just download it on Fab and automatically install it into your engine, so to speak. But here, you just go through it. You just get the archive, then you unzip it, and you're good to go. Right? Yeah, and then
that's just what I want to have.
Yeah, and then back in Unreal Engine, in the plugins settings, you just make sure you just go and search for Cascadeur, and then you have this Cascadeur live link, and make sure that it's turned on. You'll probably have to restart your engine then, but yeah, that's the only preparations you need in order to make this work. Then in Cascadeur, we go into synchronization and then turn on live link. So next thing we want to do in Unreal Engine, in window, virtual production, it's already on. Okay, yeah. We get to this video, get to this window, which is live link, and then we add source, look for Cascadeur, and select Cascadeur, which will give us this window here. So this is where you actually link your character in Cascadeur to that specific skeleton here, and then you either choose or create an animation for it. So this one is, I know it's called Cas Alive. You can use filter to search for it, but yeah, this is the skeleton I want to be using. And then you can either select an animation that you already have, or you can create a new animation, for example. And for that, you'll just click add new animation and then call it something rooftop live link, something like this. Once it's done, you start the live link. Okay, good. Let's just quickly generate some animation in Cascadeur, just so we had something to work with. Something like so. Like this. All right. It's doing something. And then here, the way to get this animation would be to use the sequencer. So in the sequencer, we add our character to it. And then in the animation, we can select the animation that we created, which was called Rooftop Live Link. If the animation does not appear here, you have to restart sequencer. So this is something that we've noticed happen. So yeah, sometimes it doesn't update. The sequencer doesn't update, and I don't know why. Okay, let's see. And for some reason, it doesn't work. I probably need to restart something, guys. It's just something is not working. Let's try relinking quickly. Unlink. Once again. Make sure, let's just delete this one, add source. Okay. This is live streaming for you guys.
Of course.
There's always something that goes wrong.
Now, but see, I love when this sort of thing happens, right? Because it shows like all the use cases, like even some of the strange ones where like it should work, but it doesn't. So then what do you do at that point? What other things can we try?
Just making sure that I select the correct one. And then this one. Yeah, now it works. Okay. Okay. So the way it works, right? So we have this animation here now, and we can actually, the timelines are synced, right? So see, like I'm changing the timeline in Cascadeur, and it's sort of like in real time syncs the timeline with the sequencer. So you can either play back your animation and see what happens there, or you can just go to any specific frame and then see the results update in your scene in real time. So for example, if we were to say change like this frame of the animation, we just make a keyframe there, By this time, you know the drill, right? So you will just move the character and it regenerates the animation for us. Yeah. But the best part is that you can actually, make those changes in real time and, kind of like get Cassie to like almost like to wave at the camera. I wish. Anyways, yeah. So this is how Live Link works now.
Simply being able to put the character into the environment and then animate around the environment without having to like port your environment to your animation suite, line up everything there, and then re-export that back out to Unreal and position it so that everything works and is aligned is so nice. Because this, like, let's say your character had to walk up to a button and press it, right? Well, you have the environment, they're linked. You can see exactly where the button is and you can adjust it in Cascadeur and it just updates in real time. There is so cool.
True. And I had this example prepared, because I had these shells lying around and I thought like, okay, what can we do to kind of like get the character to, just do something with the obstacle? But obviously we've already solved it, right? By just running around. But maybe we could just get it to like jump over it or something. So yeah, you can definitely use this environment. However, as you can see, like it's not going to be physical environments, right? But at the same time, you can still, just play around with it and let's. The only issue that I've found now is it's difficult to kind of like go between different ways you manipulate the viewport because in Unreal you normally you just go WSD as you would in the games, right? And in Cascadeur it's more like Maya style with Alt pressed, and it doesn't always it kind of works the same. It's just
Probably
like inverted.
actually plan to add WASD, and we have a lot of we have users who are asking for it, so there's a feature request for that.
Yeah, selfishly, as many different key configurations and controls that you can put into a software as possible, I love.
Right, so you see, like, okay, we got it. Sorry, control thing. Yeah, you can sort of like get it to jump over it. And then again, back in Cascadeur, you can say that, okay, so we have this animation created, but you can see that it doesn't look physically correct and stuff. So you can always have this physics part of the animation. And once you're done with that, you can apply its results and then have a physically accurate jump over the obstacle, like in no time.
The fact that this is up and running a leap over that obstacle in 90 seconds while also explaining what you're doing, I just love that.
Yeah, gives you like an idea of how fast you, and then again it doesn't have to be your final results, right? As we said with you can really sketch your animation or get like the general idea of the timing and what have you, but then you can always use the unbaking tool, turn it into keyframe animation, and then just polish it, finalize the details, bring more character to it, do whatever you want. It's just like sort of speeds up the initial process of getting the animation. I don't know how many times, by how many times. And I think this is specifically very important for people who are new to the animation, to get some result that you can start to work with almost in the first, a couple of minutes versus having to learn how to keyframe, do all those tedious work with regards to the animation and almost never get to the end results, before you give up on it.
I mean, I can almost see this being revolutionary for things like animatics and stuff, right? Like things where you don't want to put in hundreds of hours of work into it because it's probably going to be iterated on dozens and dozens of times. Getting something that feels at least loosely believable up and running in minutes, like is really great for iteration. That is super cool.
Right. And another thing that I want to show, and I really hope it works. So well, it should work. It should work. Just say we have another character, right? And this is typically the way you would get the characters inside Cascadeur. So So you're prompted, once you import your character, you're prompted to go into the rig mode for this character. And this is where you see this rigging tool, which is which often just recognizes the character fully. If it's like Mixamo, say Daz 3D, Human IK in Maya. So it understands it knows the skeletal structure and the naming of those bones, and it automatically creates the rig for it. If it doesn't recognize it, it's just like you drag and drop. Yeah.
The Unreal standard skeleton is also recognized, by the way.
Yeah. So you just if it's not, you just drag and drop those points on the schematics, and it does all the rest automatically. So then you generate the rig, and that effectively gives you, this auto-posing rig, which you can now, play around with and pose, animate, retarget, and what have you. So let's say we have this character now. Let's generate an animation for this one in less than 90 seconds. And for that one, let's do something rather like calm and just not much is going on for this one. Just a bit of walking. Also, something like this. Just a bit of walking around. All right. So that's another character which is open in a separate scene. Now let's find this this guy here. I believe it was Scout. Let me see. Oh my god, just use search. Yeah, this is the guy. So let's bring him into the scene, and with the live link, if you check it out, so if we go into the first scene here, you can see that it's linked here, but it's not linked here in the second scene. So for this one, we just look for, what's it called? By the way, if you accidentally close the window, no worries, just open it up again with the live link there. So we're looking for robot Scout. And again, we can either create an animation for it, or we can just use whatever animation we have already here. Set it to, well, let's just create it for now. Okay, and start live link. Now, in the live link window, it's now connected another character, and let's see if it works. Drum roll, someone. By the way, yeah, in the sequencer, we do the same thing. So we add actor to the sequencer, add animation, robot, rooftop. That was it. So this happens often, and I believe that would be on the side of Unreal Engine, that you add animation, but the sequencer doesn't update. So you just reopen the sequencer, and there you go. Sorry, there you go. This is the animation that you have. And yeah, and now we can have multiple characters linked in the same scene at once.
That's so cool. We also just had someone in chat said this would have saved my team so much time last week. Hopefully we'll save you time next week, right?
Yes. Yeah. True. Yeah, I believe that's probably it. Oh, by the way, one more thing I wanted to show. So this, we were talking about like generating animation, right, and using in-betweening. And talking about the current update that we have now is we have a new type of animation generation, which we call like root motion. One of the coolest part about it is that allows you to take animation as a reference and then protrude it through, any kind of like curve or what have you, like trajectory that you will set for the character. But also is a different kind of animation generator which has
Generative model. Yeah.
It's a new.
It is a
It's
diffusion. It is a diffusion model, and so it gives different results each time you press. And the goal of it was mostly that, unlike in between, which is a type of, which is almost a type of interpolation by now, this one actually generates the motion from, like, it changes the keyframes, but it is much more expressive. It has much more freedom and so on.
So what I'm trying to show here with the same, with the same 3 keyframes, it just takes time to kind of like, wake up or generate. Not that long, right? But yeah. Sorry, just turn off physics for now because we don't need it yet. So with these same 3 keyframes, so it generated this type of animation. So you can see that it's sort of like maybe it's not fully accurate for this one, but okay, let's give it another try. And this is also another difference with in-betweening, because in-betweening gives you a consistent result. Here, you sort of like literally can generate it, use it many times, and it will generate the animation
differently.
Yeah, differently. I'm kind of thinking, like,
it's not, but you can kind of turn the character around a bit or something, and it will. Yeah, it's actually not as stable force as in between right now, but it is. It listens more to the labels that you give, and actually, what we found out for now is that if you give it the ability to basically rewrite the frames, then and it seems like it's a vital ability for it. Then it can generate very interesting expressive animations. Whereas when we tried to limit it to get strictly into the frames, it kind of started working more like in betweening, but a bit worse. So yeah.
Sorry, I'm cheating here, but I'm just doing something. Just doing level design dictated by animation.
We call these happy accidents, I believe.
Like copium for me. More like it. Yeah, something like this. That was not the point of this, but yeah, still you can change the poses. You can sort of like, okay, say move the character around. As you can see, it does not update in real time, so you have to regenerate it. But yeah, it can give you like more creative results. And also with it, you have a set of styles you can choose from, such as like wait a second, I believe it's here, right? Root motion, yeah. So you can choose different styles like walk, run, jump, acrobatic, and then you can get different kinds of results depending on that. But essentially, that's one of the systems that I believe will allow us to also generate idle animations for the characters, and yeah, so things like this.
And you could use this as like that kind of creative idea, kind of sparking thing. And then if it does give you some results that maybe you aren't exactly looking for, you could then take this animation and modify it and apply physics and do all that stuff that you showed off before, right?
Yeah, exactly. I like this one, to be honest.
Yes.
And again, like getting this from like for a couple of seconds. Come on.
That honestly, that would have taken me like a full day, like 10 years ago when I was doing animation. Doing it in a handful of minutes is awesome.
And I think if I could just share like a part of like personal story, that was my personal thing with animation. When in Maya, I fully like animated the characters sort of like sitting on the like chair reading the magazine. Then he would like throw away the magazine and then punch like something like a box that was standing next to him. And I done so much work on it. I probably spent like a week, fine tuning like all the secondary motion, making sure that it's expressive. And the guys were like, "Yeah, we love the animation, but something changed. Could he just be standing and not sitting?" And I thought like, I should be able to like do something to this animation in order to make this happen. And I couldn't. I had to redo the whole thing again. And that's something that completely broke me, because I thought like the workflow is so rigid that you can do nothing at some point, in the animation. But here, at any point you can go back, you can unbake the animation, you can regenerate parts of it, you can just, delete parts of the animation. You can be playful with it. You can just do Frankenstein of different kinds of animations from multiple places and different characters, and then you can just be like sort of like a choreographer or something like this.
Yeah. I'm working on a project right now that has a lot of animation in it, and it has been one of those things where I'll get to it. I'll get to the animation eventually. I'll get there. And watching this now, I'm actually kind of excited to dive in, because I think it's going to be way simpler and way more intuitive and fun than I probably would have had just trying to do it all from scratch by myself.
And fun is something we stand by and control because we are all control freaks.
Awesome. Do we have any other content that we wanted to show off?
Well, everything that I wanted to show, I think I pretty much did.
Yeah, we wanted to cover up some plans that we see how to extend the live link functionality. I don't know, Nathaniel, should we just say it, or will you share the screen? Oh, I think you're
currently muted.
muted.
Still nothing? I still don't hear you.
Doesn't show as muted on the screen itself.
It looks like a source thing. Maybe switch to the headset mic temporarily. It's a quick solution.
Here, let's see. Do you hear that?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back.
And then nothing.
No, it's
the other mic sounds fine enough for
yeah. It sounds good.
It's
you can.
I got this nice expensive mic and I'm talking through my webcam.
It happens.
Yeah, I'll mention a few things. I know we're a little tight on time, but yeah, I was going to say, if you want to go ahead and switch the screen over,
yeah,
I could talk a little bit about, as Alex had mentioned, some of the things that we obviously see as potential ways to improve the live link capabilities inside of Unreal. And I thought I'd also take a few moments to just talk about some interesting things you might encounter if hopefully you're inspired enough to try Cascadeur watching the stream, and just some cool things you might want to be aware of if you're starting to bring Unreal content into the application. So that's kind of the two things I'll kind of touch on here. So the first one, let's start by talking about the current workflow, right? So the current workflow is kind of like what you described earlier. Let's say I'm here in Unreal and I've got this and I want to set up this live link, right? So I obviously want to reference that environment. And so now we do have to kind of go in there and say like export level and then import that in. And everything should be kosher at that point. I could link up here and we could start playing animations or whatever. But I'm a big fan of the give me the one click button, right? Like I want to select an animation clip and click a button and it just shows up in the other app. So one of the things we definitely want to explore more, I think, would be being able to get in an ideal world. I think the ideal world would be round trip. Like if you could be in Unreal and we could move this object in Unreal and it would update in Cascadeur, or if we move this in Cascadeur, it updates in Unreal. Now, that's things I think now that we have the unlink or the live linking capabilities in place, those will be the things we'll be kind of exploring next. Like how do we simplify the process so you don't have to say export FBX, find that file, import it in. And I would love to see, too, for myself, the same thing with animations. One thing you should be aware of that when I first started using the live link, and I didn't quite really realize, is that the live link, like when you say use this animation in Unreal, that just becomes a container for whatever your animation data is. So if you link to your attack animation in Unreal, that attack animation is wiped with whatever the animation is inside of Cascadeur at the moment. So it would be great to have a thing where you could say you're in Unreal and you want to work on this attack animation and live link it. You select the attack animation, say send to Cascadeur, and then it imports it in on the fly and then links it immediately. Like little improvements in as far as the workflow to simplify things, I think are things that I hope I can explore and we can explore going down the road. So I wanted to mention that. A few other things too. We do know that we want to start working on how we can integrate metahuman facial animation inside of Cascadeur. There's not really metahuman face rig support at the moment, but that is something we are going to be working on this year as far as improvements to the facial animation workflow inside of Cascadeur. So I wanted to just kind of let people know for that roadmap. Metahuman support is a goal of ours that we want to look into further. Another thing that I really want to kind of get into, and this is kind of, I guess, my bread and butter as far as where I sit within the team, is related to rigging. So if you start to bring in some of your Unreal characters into Cascadeur, a few things to kind of note, and Max had kind of covered this earlier. It's really nice if you bring in a character in. We essentially have like a rig mode. You hit this button, and it takes you into the rig mode. And what's really cool about Cascadeur, and this is something I've never seen in any other application before, is that with your traditional 3D applications, your animation data exists on the rig, the control rig or your custom Maya rig or whatever, and then the joints are controlled by that rig. And that's vastly different than how it is inside of Cascadeur. Your animation data starts and ends on your joints. And so here, for example, I can go into the rig mode and I can just hit generate, and my animation data is preserved even though I went in to do modifications to my rig. So I can go in, make changes to my rig if I just decide I want to add some more controls or something, and I haven't lost my animation data. And the other interesting thing about it that I really loved when I started using Cascadeur for just side work was, a lot of times you're working on a project and all you have is the FBX files on the Unreal side, and they don't have the rigs with them. And so before, if I was in Maya, I would say, oh, now I have to bring this character into Maya. I have to rig it. But then that rig isn't going to allow me to load that animation data onto it. So I'm going to have to bring it to HIK, bake the animation data over to the control rig. In Unreal, kind of similar thing, right? You add your animation and then you bake it to control rig and then animate on control rig and bake back. But because Cascadeur's rigs don't control the joints and the animation data lives on the joints, at any point, I have a rig right now of this character moving, and I can just import an animation and the animation will just replace what's there at that moment. So that's a really nice thing. I think probably isn't discussed a lot, but when you get in that workflow of I have a library of FBX files and I can just import them in at any moment and see the results without having to worry about going back and forth between a rig is really great. And then the other thing I kind of want to mention is here's just an example. So like this morning, I took this Unreal asset, right, the Paragon character, and I used generative AI to kind of play around. I thought like, what if this guy has kind of like some sneaky type of walk or something? So I generated this, and then I kind of extracted out a walk cycle in the middle of this, so I can essentially get, from this first part, I can do like a stand to start walking, like a sneak walk. I can do a sneak walk cycle and then back. Now, if I look at this right now, what happened? Well, I forgot, Unreal, they have those IK root bones and the IK hand bones, and they're left behind. Well, obviously, I don't want that. I want those to follow along with the feet. So that's a common thing I see on the Discord server is people say, hey, I'm bringing in this Unreal character and the IK bones are left behind. So I thought I'd just show everyone real quick what you can do to fix that, because it's really easy. Essentially, we just go into rig mode, and you'll get some warning about losing custom tangent handles. All right.
Welcome back. So sorry about that. My internet just decided, hey, you know what? No. So had to do a quick reboot there, but we are back. I'm so sorry, Nathaniel. Please, you were still showing some stuff, correct?
Yeah. It was a little bit of a side tangent. I love talking about the rigging side of things. The short of it is essentially, we can add in root constraints with our characters, so things are tracked, and you can have your rig control multiple joints, and you can go and kind of make those corrections at any point, really after the fact, and it's really user friendly, because when people usually hear, rigs, they're kind of intimidated by it. And along that side, though, I did also want to say another goal we have as far as that integration with Unreal is working on trying to make it as seamless as possible for you to take those modular rigs that you've set up inside of Unreal and bring those over to Cascadeur as well. So being able to look at, our underlying systems are kind of similar in the sense that we have this modularity that is just put together on the Quick Rig tool. So looking at how we can know when you've rigged something with the spine module in Unreal, we can convert that quickly and easily over to Cascadeur. So even the rigging process is simplified for the end users inside of Unreal. And so really all this is in a kind of start with that next step of, now that we're pushing data into Unreal, now the next step is how do we have Unreal push content to the Cascadeur side, and then start to kind of build up that round trip experience so that Cascadeur feels more like an extra viewport that you're working alongside of when you're working inside of Unreal. So that's the goal and the dream.
Awesome. Great. Was there anything else we wanted to show off while we have everything up and running, or are we ready to jump into some Q&A?
Oh, you can just quickly switch to my screen where
Sure.
I just try to clean up the animation that I got and use some physics with it, just to kind of like wrap up my story, I guess.
Right, you're up and running.
Yeah, so that was the thing that we did before with the animation that we got. So I unbaked it. I cleaned up the position of the feet so they're not sliding and they're sort of like, I guess, on the surfaces rather accurately, like here. And also because we don't have those objects present in our animation, I was just forcing fulcrum points at the points of contact, so I would be able to use physics. And then, as you can see, with physics, it does play around a little bit with the character's center of mass and everything. Then we can just apply this result to our animation, probably add some secondary motion to it as well, because why not? And yep, there we have it. So the scene that we built. Yay. Something like so.
Love it.
Yep. So that's me.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for putting this demo together and coming on to talk about it. We have received not only a ton of love in the chat for the tools. A lot of people really excited for this. I'm being one of them. And we have gotten a ton of questions. I know we're running a little bit tight on time, so we're going to try to rapid fire these maybe if we can. But I would like to get through, at least a few of these if we could. So you ready to take some questions?
Let's go, guys.
Yep. Let's do it. Perfect. So first question is this also for rigging skeletons or just for posing and animating? I think we kind of saw that in action, but...
Yes, so right now Cascadeur assumes that you have a mesh that is already vert weighted with a skeleton in it. And then from there, Cascadeur has its own rigging tools, and they're super friendly, just selecting joint, saying add rig element. So yeah, you build the rig inside of Cascadeur, but as I'd mentioned earlier, the nice thing is that rig doesn't constrain you to add animation data from any source on top of it.
Yeah, we're thinking about
sorry.
We're thinking about adding the ability to rate the skeletons and add some skinning, probably more automatic, but when you do something automatic, you then want to add some control, and that's a big thing. And maybe, yeah, I don't want to put any concrete timeline. Definitely not 2026, but maybe 2027, maybe 2028. But we would love to add some skinning and rigging. I mean, like joints rigging capabilities, adding joints and creating the skeleton. But it's not very close. I guess the facial rig that Nathaniel mentioned, at least for like metahuman, maybe some other cases, but I think metahuman is like our main goal here. Adding the facial, the ability to create controlled facial animation is prioritized over skinning and such stuff.
Right. Does LiveLink work with macOS versions of Cascadeur?
I think right now no, because we only compiled it for the Windows part. But once we release it on Fab, which we plan to do, again, hard to put any timings on development side. But I think in April, high probability, we will put it on Fab, and then it will release the source code and then compiled and set Unreal. So it should be working on Mac, I think, as well. We haven't tested it much. I think it should work, or at least to fix it work. It is in the plans.
Great. This came up a couple different times in a couple different formats, but folks were curious. What did you use to train these AI models for these sorts of animations?
Well, Cascadeur is a part of Bineki that creates games, mostly mobile games, but not only. So we had some data from those games, especially fighting data, mostly fighting games. And we also have some XN suits, and we used it like the Cascadeur team to shoot our own mockup data, because we need specific data to train the models. So these are the main two ways we got.
Yeah, so most importantly, that it's sort of called ethical AI, right? Ethical stuff, where we train our own, like we record our own data. And Alexander mentioned games, but you have to understand that, Cascadeur has been in development for like 15 years, and was used for, a lot of game production. So there were a lot of animations to choose from.
Right. And this is another one that I think we did kind of touch on a little bit, but can we change the weight or style of the fill animations itself, such as a slider for gravity or bounce? I think we largely covered that, but...
Yeah, there is the slider for the gravity, and
yeah, the only thing to think you have to understand is that in Cascadeur, like you can't make the character weigh like a ton and expect it to behave a certain way, right? Because as Alex mentioned earlier, like there's no understanding about like the muscle strength or things like this, right? So the overall mass of the character, which is like the sum of characters' rigid bodies, will affect the character's center of mass, right? The center of gravity. And this is where, you have to think about this, about it in this aspect, right?
Like a lot of time people think that if you have something very heavy, then like your muscles have to like really they can't hold it and it kind of falls. But the muscles have like infinite strength, at least in the tools we have mentioned right now. We have some ragdoll capabilities as well, and they could function in different ways, but in different way. But this default tool that we kind of recommend to use from the start, they don't take that into account. So we actually dug into this topic a bit, but it's not as easy as it seems. And yeah, maybe we'll tackle that further on. But right now, the muscles, the main tools we demonstrated, the muscles have like infinite strength.
But that, again, like even if your character holds a very heavy box, you will see how this influences the character's like center of mass. So if it tries to hold it,
it will balance
with its hands outstretched, then it will balance it in a way that it would be possible for it to kind of like be stable.
I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. Did have another question. We kind of just touched on it a little bit, so I figured it made sense to ask this here. And that is, does Cascadeur have a memory and remember usual animation choices that it would make over time as an animator, such as like exaggeration or stylized?
Currently, no. It doesn't remember anything. And then a lot of questions we get asked is, does it send something to the server side? It doesn't send anything to the server side. No, it has retrained models, and maybe in some future we will allow to retrain the models on your dataset. But yeah, you will need a pretty large dataset for that if we're talking about in-betweening. So yeah, not at the moment, but it doesn't have any memory of what you did. It doesn't spy on you or anything.
I believe I saw a toggle in one of those lists here for this, so maybe I'm correct, maybe I'm not with this. Could you are you able to do like a crouch style animation with this, like keeping the character crouched the entire time? Obviously, you have the ability of posing them there, but does the AI also know like, hey, this is trying to be crouched and like import or infer crouched characteristics to it?
In between by default, it's hard to get. It's sometimes a bit hard to get there because the standard way the AI thinks it kind of stands up and walks and goes down. With the root motion tool, you can set a reference, and that actually works pretty well. I've tested that, and you can make a crouch with that.
It's funny because a couple of weeks ago, I did a challenge with a YouTuber who was sort of like, "Oh no, let's do it real time. I can challenge. Can I challenge you to make this kind of animation?" And there was a particular one with a person like crouching, and I tried to get in betweening to actually work consistently, and I got somewhere. The initial way would be to keep to have like multiple keyframes, like repeating the pose or keeping the character crouched, so it would not have time to fully stand up. Funny that like a couple of weeks later, we have this new version coming out, which has this root motion, which kind of like solves this. You can have your animation, and then you can control like the height of this animation by, just given like a certain position and the rotation for the pelvis, the root of the character, which is, as talking about progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you still use the override layers for those who are animators, i.e. for head turns, etc.?
We're working on that. It's actually planned. I would say it's risky to say it will be in the next release, but yeah, this year, I think high probability, we will add native animation layers.
Great. Does in-betweening work with props constrained to the joints, i.e. running with a rifle? I think we saw something pretty similar to that with the sword and shield, but
Yeah, that's one of the things. Again, you can use the reference mod a bit for this, but it still won't be exact. But if you take, usually what we do right now is what Max has shown, that you put like standard interpolation in the arms tracks, and then it will hold the rifle consistently. Correct me if I'm wrong, Max.
Yeah, that would be something that we would do. But the problem there would be then if you have, say, like a double-handed sword or like a gun that you hold with like both hands, when you then to avoid like this rigidity of the animation, to avoid it looking rigid, you would use physics. And before this current release, physics did not recognize, the constraints that you would have to have, right, in order for this to work. And now it does recognize the constraints. So if you have like a rigged, weapon and character holds it with two hands and you have constraints in place, physics will recognize it, and then you would. Well, in betweening, not so much due to these restraints, but then you can always use different kinds of interpolations for characters' arms, for example, holding the weapon, and get it to work this way, I guess. Wait, but then the question was that whether the character recognizes it has something in their hands, because I think yes, because if it's rigged, like if there's a sword rigged in their hands, it's gonna follow the animation of the hand though, but it will not recognize that there's like a sword in it, so to speak, or in betweening. Does it make sense?
Yeah. The AI doesn't have that info.
And is it something where obviously this wouldn't affect like collisions and things like that? It doesn't know where the collision of the sword is, but would it be something as simple as like taking the hand joint or rig or whatever, for lack of a better term, and making that heavy to kind of give that physics of it holding something?
If you have sorry. If you have the sword rigged, for example, as an object, right, it would have its own like rigid body where you can and you can adjust the weight of it, right, and it will then affect the character's center of mass, right, and in this regards, it will affect it, but it will affect it in the physics at the physics point, not in the in-betweening point.
Yeah, we have to kind of separate the AI and the physics, because still don't. They're not retrained. They work with what you have, and it doesn't even have to be a humanoid, because this in between works only humanoids. It doesn't work for any character, but you kind of rig other characters in Cascadeur, and the physics just works with a set of rigid bodies, so it can it will take into account the props and so on. And by the way, another feature we had, and I wanted to demonstrate, but definitely, of course, we don't have any time for that now. But other feature we added is that a lot of times you have some collision penetration going through, like the head goes through something, or the arms go through each other for whatever reason, or you have a mocap, or your arm goes through your leg, and we actually made a special tool. It's quite specific, but it's for dealing with such collision penetration. So, yeah.
Would that take long to show off, or would it be fairly brief?
I think it's specific, probably for for
Maybe we'll have to have you folks on maybe for the next update, and we'll get a chance to show that off for that.
Yeah.
Perfect. Is there a pose library? Like you can pose your character, then save that pose and call it whenever you want from the library?
Currently, no. And we actually have a bit of an agenda here that Autoposin is a bit of a library. So it actually is a library that is stuffed into like a smart rig, and whenever you move the points, it kind of of course it's like compressed into this neural network layers, but still it kind of takes out the closest that are as close as you can get. But yeah, currently we don't have a library. We would love to keep it on the Python side though, and one of the things we're working on, and we really wanted to get it into this release, but moved on to the next release is to be able to add UI elements from the Python side, and then maybe we can add some pose library, or at least if people really want to do it, they are able to actually write a plugin that does it.
I do believe, though, there is some scripts like this for a pose library.
Yeah, but
Roman
there are
would be able to,
but they don't have UI, and that was
right.
their problem. But now we will add the ability to script UI in there.
It was like the story was one of the companies were using Cascadeur for their animation, and when we work with actually companies, they have like their private chat like on Discord and private support, and oftentimes they request certain things which are not there yet, or that need to be done for their particular needs. And I think like Pose Library was born out of that particular situation. But also like a workaround would be to have like a scene where you would have like different poses on different keyframes, and then you can just copy any pose or retarget any pose from anything to anything, given it's humanoid. Or quadruped. Or quadruped as well, because you can retarget quadrupeds now.
That was one that I actually hadn't seen in the chat, but I was going to ask: is this a bipedal specific kind of tool, or can you do quadrupeds or even beyond? It sounds like quadrupeds.
We have the rigging tools for quadrupeds, and we have autoposing for quadrupeds. We don't have in betweening as of yet, and also because we don't have and we can't record easily the mockup data for quadrupeds, but maybe at some point we do find a way to record data for it as well.
Awesome. How does the in-betweening look on things that are intentionally stylized with a lot of bounciness and springy movement? Is the in-betweening data more realistic? Does it handle that kind of transition well?
Yeah, it's mostly mockup data, so it's realistic. I think the most stylized is from our fighting games, but they still have some realistic feel, which was intended by the creators of the game. So, yeah.
Right. Another question we had here is this specifically using motion capture data, or is this all hand keyframed? I would assume probably a mix of both.
You mean the data sets, or?
Unfortunately, the question just says, is this using specifically motion capture data, or is this all hand keyframed? I would assume the data sets, or probably even what you were showing in the demo.
What we've shown, I don't know, we kind of made it on the demo, but the data sets are, as I said, mostly, they're mostly motion capture data, because it's the easiest way to create a large data set, and that's what we need for in-between. By the way, for autoposing, especially for example for quadruped autoposing, the data set was completely hand-made. I think we bought a little bit of data, but mostly we just created it by hand. But autoposing doesn't require as much data.
Yeah. Another question we had here is that men and women carry mass differently. Are there presets to change the center of mass, or are there options to set the mass manually in the capsule or with greater weight? I know we already saw that you can adjust the mass on specific joints, but is there like a preset to kind of determine that, or is it kind of just based on the rig itself?
By default, when you rig the character, it just assumes it gives it like a standard, like average human body weight ratio, I believe. But then you can, but it again, like if your body, like we saw in the robots, right? Your body is up there and you have like long legs, then obviously most of the mass would be still up there, right? So it would give you somewhat, believable distribution based on your character. But then you can always adjust the weight of those elements and fine tune it the way you want to.
Great. Another question we have here, kind of back to that stylized sort of topic, is it possible to animate the scale of bones in order to do squash and stretch for stylized cartoony animation?
Well, we do support some segmental scale compensation to handle that better, but I would say you need you would need to go into technical details. So it's not there by default. The rig is more for working without the scale, is for now. But we're planning on expanding capabilities.
But there are still like band-aid ways to kind of like get it to work. You like lock all the points, you hard lock all the points, and then you can stretch them.
Yeah, but it doesn't automatically scale the bone. Maybe we can add it at some point, but usually if it's not a very big stretch, you don't need to scale. It's enough to stretch it, and you can stretch by locking it.
Awesome. I got a couple questions. All I'm going to kind of put into one here, which is, how do they get Cascadeur? What does it cost? And is it a one-time license or a subscription model?
I can quickly answer that, I believe. So you get Cascadeur, you can go to the website and get yourself a free version of Cascadeur. Then it supports most of the functionality. It only limits you cannot export animation. So you can try different things. In betweening works in the free version, so you can definitely try those things out, see how this works. But then when exporting, and by the way, live link, it's not a free function, so you have to buy a subscription, right? So we have Indie subscriptions, and then we have Pro subscriptions. Indie, I believe, costs $99 a year. Am I correct? And the Pro subscription costs $399 per year. If you buy a yearly subscription, you get a yearly Pro subscription, I believe. You get something which is called perpetual license. So by the end of that period, whatever latest version you get and all the like fixes for it, you can keep it forever. Also, there's a you can always try a trial period. Which actually updates with every new version, every major update. So you can try it for free for 2 weeks, I believe. Yeah, that's probably it. And then we have like a separate license, like teamed license for companies and educational licenses for the students and universities.
And we do have per month payment, but you don't get the perpetual license with per month payment.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Well, I've already kept you folks very long, and I appreciate sticking around with us here, and I appreciate the audience for sticking around through the technical difficulty that we had there. I have 2 final questions for you. One of them, I feel like we're probably pushing the envelope here a little bit, but I figure we'll throw it to you anyways, is what is a feature or function or something you're hoping to eventually get into Cascadeur without any specific timelines or promises for this feature?
It's actually a very easy one. Listen, like we want it to read your mind, and you kind of like imagine things, and then it happens, and it looks cool. And you totally did not dream of it,
Another option for an answer, which we heard a lot in discussions and conversations, is a magical button that you press and everything works.
Oh, right.
That's the next update, right? That's when that's coming.
Yeah, we covered some of the things, and one of them is facial animation. Another thing that eventually we would love to have inside is some skinning and rigging in terms of skeleton capabilities, creating the skeleton. So ideally, yeah. These are like very big long-term goals. Well, of course, we have a lot of other smaller stuff that I don't think
But it's a funny thing, because when you think about like magic buttons and stuff like this, I remember when I first heard about Cascadeur, and it was like probably 2019 or 2020, and the actual like the founder of Cascadeur was like sharing these details with me, like saying like, imagine there would be like, this green ghost or like the physics tool, and you just click this button and it just gives you like physically accurate animation. It's not there yet, but it's like, this is the plan, this is the vision, and like a couple of years later, it's there, it's working. And, like half a year ago, in-betweening was not even a thing, it didn't exist. But now we have, in-betweening pair up with fluid motion and stuff like that. And
First in-between came up a year ago.
a year ago. Okay. Well,
time flies.
Still,
but
time flies. But
yeah.
I mean, like that gives you a perspective with how quickly things develop. And this is something that, being part of the team makes you very, very proud that every 3 months or every next update, you're genuinely surprised. Even like, I work for this company. I mean, like I'm there, and still I'm surprised at the pace that things develop. So yeah.
Great. One more final question for you before I let you folks go. And that is, of all of the tools, the features, the lessons that we've covered here, what is the one thing that you would give to folks who are just about to jump into Cascadeur, be that they are longtime veterans of animation, or even just somebody who's like, you know what, I've never done any animation yet. This looks like an easy or an approachable entry point for me to get into it. What are some tips, advice, tricks, anything like that you'd give folks who are jumping into Cascadeur?
If I may, I think the point is that, and this could be true for the people who are very new to animation, and to the people who are professionals, is, every tool can have like multiple, it's difficult to put into words, but what I'm trying to say is that you can use these tools, as someone new to the animation, they will impress you and be like, they will give you a very quick entry into animations, meaning you can get, good results quickly, or decent results quickly, right? Without paying too much attention. But as a professional, those same tools can give you additional information, or like more insights into like how physics works, right? Or how, like certain things work, that you can also not necessarily, maybe not even apply, but use as a reference, for your particular animation. So there's ways and there's layers to it. So what we try to do, I think, is we want to make everything very friendly for people who are new to the animation. But every single thing, like with physics, you saw like those sliders, right? How much of secondary motion there is. But you can always go into dig as deep as you want, actually, with, control the secondary motion for every specific particular body part on every particular interval, or in every particular keyframe. So you can go into as much detail as you want, and you can fine tune the animation as, and perfect it, and polish it as much as you want. But the biggest point is that you can get a good result, or a decent result, very, very quickly. Right. Sorry, and probably the idea was like what advice you would get, or like, I don't remember, but I think the advice is like to experiment, to be open to new technology, and be open to, new things that are out there, because, the progress never stops, right? And oftentimes, unfortunately, we see people getting stuck in the, in the past, or in their safe space, what they already know how it works.
Actually, even among Cascadeur users who started before we had, I don't know, autopausing, they kind of tend to use the old rig, do everything the old way, and it's not easy to adapt. So adapting new tools would definitely be great as a recommendation. We also have on our website, we have learn, and there we try to gather up the materials how to learn. Different tutorials, video tutorials, we have documentation, and quite extensive documentation. So this could be things they could try out.
Coming in new is that for me, Cascadeur really eliminates the a steep learning curve to get started in animation compared to traditional 3D applications I've animated in before. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're going to still need to develop the eye for and learn those principles of animation. I think Cascadeur is just going to get you there a lot faster. So I think for someone coming in, it's a great app to easily explore and pose things, and then once you start to feel comfortable with the app, then just start to study those core animation concepts that have been around forever, and that's going to help push your quality of your animation and the output that much more. So Cascadeur like removes the barrier, makes things simple, and then you can just really focus on kind of those artistic choices that you're making, and then developing that eye over time. Which that just takes time. You don't get an eye for animation overnight. So
yeah, I think that's really worth emphasizing. I think you at least a few of you touched on this same idea, which is that it's okay to fail. It's okay to do something wrong. It's okay to make a mistake or not get the result that you want. Where that becomes a problem is when you let that stop you from trying again, right? So be comfortable going in there knowing that, hey, you're probably not going to make the perfect thing you had in your head the first time you open the application, right? But give it some time, play around with the tools, try some things out, see what works, see what doesn't. You will eventually get there, but it's almost certainly not going to happen, animation one.
it
And
will be close though.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, just from looking at this,
Cascadeur makes it easy. Yeah.
Well, we'll be trying to make it work as fast as we can.
Yeah.
And actually, if someone is stuck with something like hit a wall, we have a Discord channel where we can gladly help everyone with their problems.
Yes, and I was actually just got to ask if you had any advice or thoughts or anything on that note while we had you here too as well, Andre.
Yep. So go to the website, get the version. Yeah, go to the website.
Yeah, echoing what these folks said.
Yeah, get the version, experiment, see if it works for you, and yeah, have fun with it. We also have like our YouTube channel where we post tutorials, and we try to post regularly and highlight all the new features, obviously for every release. And yeah, we have a Discord channel, as Andrew mentioned, where people share their own, their own works. They ask questions. We have tech support there who also help and answer questions. And yeah, I guess that's the way to go.
Great. I know that I said that was the last question, but I did have one more quick one here for you that I think is interesting. And they were asking, what is the minimum version for UE and or Cascadeur that they need in order to live link? If we know.
5.5
version. Yeah, I think right now 5.5, but once we release it on Fab, I think it should work on maybe as early as 5.0. But we haven't tested that tool throughout. It is in a bit of an alpha state, to be honest. Well, maybe about beta stage, but still, yeah.
Awesome. Well, a huge thank you again to you all for joining us, to our lovely guests for coming on and talking about the tool and showing it off, and maybe even kind of sparking an animation urge in me. That's pretty impressive to do. So I definitely can't wait to jump in and try this stuff out. So appreciate you folks for coming on and doing this. And that is going to wrap up the today's Inside Unreal. A huge thank you again to our wonderful guests for coming on, and a huge thank you to you all for watching as well. The show would not be what it is without you, your questions, and your time. And if any of you came partway through the stream and wanted to rewatch a section, no worries. We post all of our streams in video format that can be viewed on demand on both of our Twitch and YouTube channels at Unreal Engine. You can also keep up with the latest news, shoutouts, and other cool information on our socials at Unreal Engine. And if you haven't already, come join us at the Epic Developer Community, where we have our documentations, tutorials from both the community and Epic staff alike, forums, and so much more. But again, thank you. Huge shout out to the team. And we will see you all next week. And actually, I do have a little bit of an announcement you should have seen, maybe if you were tuned into the news for this week, that we have a big Indies week happening next week that includes 4 live streams on Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, and Friday. I don't know why I mixed up the days of the week there, but those are the days that it'll be. So we have plenty of content for you coming up next week, and we're really excited about it, looking forward to it. So if you haven't already, please check out the news on the feed at unrealengine.com and read all about it, because there's a bunch of really cool stuff there, and we have a lot of cool stuff coming to you next week. But with that, I will let you all go. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Everybody.
Thank you.